According to Jacksonville University professor Jorge Majfud, the current corporate capitalism is a legacy of the slave system, in the name of freedom, the exploitation of those below, the concentration of wealth, the sacralization of the masters' entrepreneurs, and the demonization of the workers' slaves. One of the conservative hypotheses, since they never reached the category of theories, was based on justifying inequality as a natural consequence of prosperity. In a tribe or in ancient times, the differences were never as great as in our current societies. Hence the idea that 1. Prosperity comes from inequality, or 2. Inequality is a necessary and inevitable consequence of prosperity prevailed. Never before have the poor been less poor than today, people say, and we have to thank capitalism and the rich for all this. Let us see.
For generations, societies have debated the meaning of social inequality and whether this is good or bad. Based on the great crisis of the 21st century, hijacked democracies, propaganda, and rebellions by Professor Jorge Majfud. This show of radical ignorance, says Professor Majfud, is the banner of libertarians and neoliberals, missionaries against the intervention of governments, of their regulations and their taxes, in the social and economic lives of the peoples. Ironically, they have the US corporations as their ideological model, whose prosperity, like Europe's, was built on slavery and by force of brutal imperial interventions, by governments and their secret agencies, on the rest of humanity. Nor do they see corporations as dictatorships in the way fiefdoms were in the Middle Ages and banana republics more recently. Hence the idea that 1. Prosperity comes from inequality, or 2. Inequality is a necessary and inevitable consequence of prosperity prevailed. Never before have the poor been less poor than today, and we have to thank capitalism and the rich for all this. The fact that today the poor are less poor than yesterday is not proof of the benefits of capitalism, says Professor Jorge Majfud, since humanity has been making progress for millennia and all at an accelerated rate. No technical or scientific progress is not due to capitalism or the capitalists. The millionaires just kidnapped them. The current corporate capitalism is a legacy of the slave system, in the name of freedom, the exploitation of those below, the concentration of wealth, the sacralization of the masters' entrepreneurs, and the demonization of the workers' slaves. At this moment, capitalism is bringing nothing but existential problems, such as 1. The destruction of the planet by dint of growth based on consumption and destruction, and 2. The aggravation of social differences, which will lead to greater conflicts. Capitalism is exhausted, and the crisis lies in denying the socialization of human progress, which will be inevitable after the breakdown, with massive robotization and the development of artificial intelligence. To suggest that the problem of inequality be solved with handouts is like fighting an infection with aspirin. Instead of being cured, the infection increases. The breakdown could be avoided by a global agreement, but if sanity were not a rare commodity, we would not be drowning in an environmental crisis now. The alternative is a global collapse, a dystopian situation where all the laws accepted today as dogmas, such as the value of the dollar and of private property, are broken. A collapse where there are no winners, but a definitive regression to the Middle Ages. The super-rich are the enemies of humanity. Not only do they kidnap wealth from the rest, they not only monopolize politics in democracies and dictatorships, but they keep them in a state of hypnosis through 1. The great propaganda media, 2. The media of distraction, toxic fun and fragmentary, and 3. By virtue of keeping millions of other humans in a state of need, as wage slaves with no time to think that their brothers and neighbors are not the pirates. But a large part of humanity loves, admires, and desires the super-rich, as the slaves loved the masters who threw a potion at them at the end of an exhausting day. The master and the potion were received as a blessing, and the rebels as the demons who wanted to turn the world upside down. That's all for now. See you in the studio.